Okay, let's take a look at a sample problem, which is asking us to compute the predetermined manufacturing overhead rate. It's also asking us to compute the manufacturing overhead allocated to the jobs during the year, to determine the under or over allocated manufacturing overhead, and then if the jobs were overcosted or undercosted by how much. So it says here, Alton Foundry in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania uses a predetermined manufacturing overhead rate to allocate overhead to individual jobs based on machine hours required. Now this is important because we need to know what base it is that they're using. It's typically machine hours or direct labor hours. In this case, it's machine hours. So at the beginning of the year, the company expected to incur the following. They have $620,000 in manufacturing overhead costs, $1,350,000 in direct labor costs, $77,500 in machine hours. Now, it's important to note too, this is the expected, what they're expecting to incur. Now we see below here at the end of the year what they actually incurred. And then we've got all those costs, and we'll discuss those here in just a minute. So let's first determine the predetermined manufacturing overhead rate. So the predetermined manufacturing overhead rate, remember, is the total estimated manufacturing overhead cost divided by the total estimated amount of the allocation base. So our total estimated manufacturing overhead in this particular example, estimated, expected, is going to be $620,000. So we'll take 620, that's our numerator, and we're going to divide that by our allocation base, which is 77,500 machine hours, remember. So we need to divide that, and I'm going to move this over just a little bit. So we've got 620,000 divided by 77,500. So if we go ahead and do the math on that, I believe we get $8 per machine hour. Okay, so that is our predetermined overhead rate. So now for every machine hour we incur, we will allocate $8. So requirement 2 then says how much manufacturing overhead was allocated to jobs during the year. Well, let's see. How much did they actually work? Well, they actually worked 54,000. That was actually incurred. So if we go ahead and take that $8 rate, I'm just going to write over here. Let's see if I can make it a little darker. $8 allocation rate and multiply that times the 54,000 hours, we should get 432,000. So that is our answer to number 2 here, 432,000. And our answer to number 1 was $8. Okay. So how much manufacturing overhead was incurred during the year? So what we need to do now is we need to look at all of these costs that were actually incurred and figure out which ones are manufacturing overhead. So direct labor cost is a product cost, but it's not part of manufacturing overhead. It is direct labor. Remember, total manufacturing costs are our direct labor, direct materials, and manufacturing overhead. So this one is not included. Then we have depreciation on the manufacturing plant and equipment. And that absolutely is an overhead cost because it's depreciation on the manufacturing plant, so our production facilities. Property taxes on the plant would also be included there because, again, it's related to production. Sales salaries is not. It's a period cost, so it's expensed as incurred. It is not included as part of manufacturing overhead. Delivery drivers' wages, same issue there. That's also a period cost. And then plant janitors' wages. That is, again, manufacturing overhead and a cost that we need to consider when we are calculating our manufacturing overhead incurred. So if we, sorry about that. I don't know how to get rid of that. So if we go ahead and add all those up, all these highlighted, 460 plus 20,500 plus 9,500, we should get a total of $490,000. So that is the answer to number 3 here, 490. So the question then is, how much was overhead over or under allocated? Okay, so what we allocated for the year is in red here, 432,000. What we actually incurred at the end of the year was 490,000. So I'm just going to write this here. So 432 was allocated or applied. 490 was incurred or actual. So the difference between the two, which is 58,000, is how much we over or under allocated our expenses. So if we allocated 432 and it was actually 490, we under allocated. We did not allocate enough money to our expenses. So in this case, we under allocated by $58,000. And then the question is, were the jobs then overcosted or undercosted? Well, the jobs actually then were undercosted, and the reason is because we only applied 432,000, even though our costs were 490. So each and every job that we allocated to did not have enough cost allocated to it, and in which case that means that our jobs were undercosted. And again, the answer would be by 58,000. Hope you find that helpful. Thank you.